Madam Speaker, the Charter for Budget Responsibility seeks to confer the important attributes of stability and credibility to a government's management of public finances and the wider economy. Stability and credibility are not exactly the first two words that spring to mind to describe the current government's management of the economy. Through its own incompetence, it has presided over a chaotic year that has shredded any remaining confidence in the Chancellor and her team, and more importantly, has done lasting damage to the life chances of so many young people who now cannot find work. And as the Chancellor prepares her spring statement, we have a Prime Minister living on borrowed time. This government is painfully lacking in real-world economic experience, and it desperately needs help. So we will not be opposing the measures this evening. Very happy to.
Does the Shadow Minister share the concerns that many, indeed probably all MPs from Northern Ireland have, and that's in relation to how this budget is, by the way, first of all, I should have welcomed the good news that there has been in relation to the tax surplus, to that's good news. I mean, look, who wouldn't be churlish not to welcome that, because it's for the benefit of us all. But just to say this, and when it comes to Northern Ireland and to the Northern Ireland Executive, the Northern Ireland Executive are finding it incredibly difficult to make ends meet, to make the budget balance, to make the books balance. And one of those things that we look back on is the Barnett Consequential. And it's been promised for many times over a number of years that the Barnett Consequential would be addressed. Now, that hasn't happened. But every time the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee have said it, individual MPs have said it, governments, Conservative government and this government have said they would look at it, but nothing has happened. Does the Shadow Minister believe it's now time to get things right for Northern Ireland, the budget, to help us to govern and deliver the goods as the government is doing here? Thank you.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I think his issue about Barnett Consequential is one directly for the Minister to reply, but the Conservative and Unionist Party, as you know, has a very strong, as he knows, has a very strong support and kinship with our citizens in Northern Ireland. As to his comment about the revenues that the government received in January of this year, I would just point out to my honourable friend that in large part was due to self-assessment returns in the year and capital gains returns that we filed in that year. And in fact, I think when we tease through the data, we will see that a lot of that came from people making what in the long run were not economic decisions in their own interest, caused and made because of the uncertainty that was brought into the economy through the Chancellor herself, confusing the people for an entire year. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, to illustrate the chaos in the last year, let me remind the House what the then Chief Secretary said in this equivalent debate on the Charter last year. The then Chief Secretary said, quote, "Growth is the primary mission of this government." But since then, and comparing the OBR forecast from 2024 and 2025, growth is down in each year of the forecast period. In 2026, it's down to 1.3% from 1.8%. It's down in 2027. It's down in 2028. And it's down in 2029. The Chief Secretary that last year said, quote, "The Chancellor's autumn 2024 budget put the public finances back on track, and we will keep them there." But no, since that statement, the Chancellor has brought forward proposals to cut £5 billion from welfare. Then she reversed them. She said that she would stick to the two-child benefit cap. Then she caved in to Labour backbenchers. The Chancellor has been forced to U-turn on her removal of winter fuel payments to pensioners. She's U-turned on her plans to tax our pubs out of existence. And she has U-turned on her damaging plans on the family farm tax and the family business tax. And after having said that she would not be coming back for more taxes, she did indeed come back to whack the British people again with tax increases amounting to over £26 billion. And when this government came to office, the forecast was that the government would need to borrow £77 billion this fiscal year. But under this Chancellor, that level of borrowing has ballooned to £120 billion so far and is forecast to reach £138 billion by the end of the year. According to November 2025 OBR, public sector net debt will continue to rise over the forecast period, despite Labour raising taxes to record levels, debt rising from 93.6% of GDP to 97% by the time of the next general election in 2028-29, if this government lasts that long. Given the wreckage it has caused in the general economy, Labour's spin doctors have started to claim the government has the fastest deficit reduction plan in the G7, but that is only because this government has spent so recklessly in its first years. And achieving this remarkable reduction rests on the credibility of the government's plans to raise taxes ahead of a general election and on their ability to rein in public spending in the out years. Plans, surely, which their skittish backbenchers will stymie if that government lasts that long. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are two changes I would like to note in this revised charter. The first is the decision to change the definition of the current budget being quote-unquote in balance. The previous charter in clause 3.6 said, ... where balance is defined as a range in surplus or in deficit of no more than 0.5% GDP. The current charter does not include this condition. I'd like to ask the Minister, why has the decision been made to remove that flexibility? And also, I'd be interested in what he thinks of the Institute of Fiscal Studies' recent report, which stated, quote, the UK's fiscal framework is based around a set of pass-fail numerical fiscal rules. The fiscal debate is overly fixated on the amount of headroom the government has against the most binding of these rules. The system incentivises the government to operate with the smallest amount of headroom possible, with policy often fine-tuned according to the central point of a highly uncertain forecast from the OBR. The IFS report recommended the UK be better served by a new framework based around a set of fiscal traffic lights. The government appears to have gone in the opposite direction to these recommendations by stressing the importance of pinpoint accuracy, and I'd just be interested in the Minister's views on that. Now, to the most significant change, Madam Deputy Speaker, the removal of what in the previous charter was clause 4.27. The removed clause said, quote, at the same time as the forecast, the OBR will produce its assessment of the extent to which fiscal policy has delivered or is likely to deliver the fiscal mandate, unquote. So the government has at a stroke removed the opportunity for an independent assessment by the OBR ahead of the government's spring statement. Yet last year, many of the OBR significantly revised many of its previous assessments ahead of the spring statement. Then the OBR wrote that they were expecting GDP growth of 1%, half the rate of the October forecast, and CPI inflation to rise from 2.5% to 3.2%. 0.6% higher than forecast in October. I've been called kiddo for a while. It is. It's exactly right. Exactly right. So it is important. This is an important point. I hope my friend, the whip, understands on our side. Understands this is an important point to make. It may have taken me time to get there, Madam Deputy Speaker, but this is the important point. So the issue here is why make this change now? The Budget Responsibility and National Audit Act 2011 is clear that the OBR must prepare fiscal and economic forecasts and assessments at least twice a year. Clause 251 of the Finance No. 2 Bill, while retaining the requirement for the OBR to prepare forecasts twice a year, seeks to remove the requirement in the 2011 Act for the OBR to provide their assessment twice a year. So perhaps the Chief Secretary can confirm that the reason we are debating... So perhaps the Minister, the wannabe Chancellor, so perhaps the Minister can confirm that the reason we are debating today a revised charter that now excludes an OBR forecast just ahead of the spring statement is specifically to preclude the OBR doing its own assessment on the imminent spring statement. Madam Deputy Speaker, we're supporting the measure tonight, but not with any confidence in this government's handling of the economy. In lacking that confidence, we are not alone. According to the latest ICAEW survey of business confidence, Business confidence fell again in the last quarter of 2025 with record concerns about the tax burden on business. In its December 2025 survey, YouGov found that 80% of the British people thought the government was handling the economy badly. It is a sorry, sorry state for our great country.
Spokesperson Challenger now.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I will not burden the House with too long a speech. There are a lot of issues with the government's and the country's economic policy making.